Let me interrupt real quick here, Byron. Congressman-elect Norman and Self are now in the front of the chamber. If they change their votes to Johnson, see if we can listen.
House will be in order.
Mr. Norman Johnson.
Mr. Self. Donalds.
Mr. Self is recorded as Donalds. Mr. Self Johnson.
With that, the majority is reached at 218, and once this is gavelled closed, Sandra, we will have a new Speaker of the House for the 119th Congress, and Mike Johnson from Louisiana. Took a little bit to get there, but you see the celebrations on the House floor.
Well, we had the lawmaker on just a few moments ago who said he had just chatted with two lawmakers that were among those who voted for someone other than Johnson. Said he was optimistic. Sounds like he had a pretty good conversation because this is obviously the outcome of that. And there is probably a pretty elated Speaker-elect Johnson walking back up the aisle there, Brett.
Let's listen in. We'll get a gavel here as he's shaking hands with all the folks. We don't know what the conversation was with Ralph Norman or Keith Self. That's Nancy Mace giving him a hug on the floor there. Let's listen into the floor. That's Claudia Tenney from New York with the hug there, and everybody giving congratulations, Sandra. And I'm sure there'll be a phone call soon from President-elect Trump, who was working hard to make this happen on a first ballot.
Joining us now, Molly Hemingway. We have been talking throughout, watching this happen, and this is how this goes. Pretty historic moment as we saw the two lawmakers approach the front there and change their votes to Johnson. Your thoughts, Molly?
Well, it ended up being kind of a thrilling moment there to see these two guys go down and change their votes. But it was a messy process. It was managed on the first vote, but it was messy getting there. But that's really, again, what democracy is like. I think a lot of Americans would like to see far more debate in the House than they've been seeing in recent decades about the issues that are confronting America. And this, might be the prologue of some interesting debates as we have new and fresh ideas about how to improve our state of government. But I think Mike Johnson probably understands, too, that he needs to improve over, not that he hasn't done a completely capable job in the last year, but that he needs to improve over what he's done and start getting more deliverables for Republican members and their voters. And that'll be much easier for him now that the Senate is going to be under Republican control and the White House as well.
Byron York, you were interrupted before. Thoughts about this as we move forward and the Trump agenda and what happens now as the certification of the election happens January 6th?
I think this was the Donald Trump effect because he's the president-elect. He is wildly popular in the Republican Party, and any Republican member of the House who's standing up against what Trump wants has to answer for that.
Let's listen in.
Received 218.
Well, that makes it official, right, Brett? We knew the tally, the new unofficial tally, had become 218, 215, 1, showing Johnson should have the votes. It wasn't official till the clerk read it, and it has. Let's listen again.
Jeffries of the state of New York has received 215. And the Honorable Tom Emmer of the state of Minnesota has received 1. Therefore, the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress. The clerk appoints the following committee to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McClain. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbene. The gentlewoman from Indiana, Mrs. Houchin. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Reschenthaler. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. Dingell. And the members of the Louisiana delegation, Mr. Higgins, Ms. Letlow, Mr. Carter, and Mr. Fields. The committee will retire from the chamber to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair.
Your thoughts about, as we wait to hear these speeches, what this moment means and kind of what it means for the agenda, and also for the Democrats, who are kind of licking their chops, I think, about this slim majority and maybe things that they can do or not do.
Well, Republicans did narrowly avert the specter of Speaker Jeffries again, but this is actually a triumph for Mike Johnson. I mean, he had a majority in which he could only lose one vote and still win, and that's what he did. So that was pretty impressive. As I was saying before, I think it's a Trump effect, and I think there was more Trump influence being exercised behind the scenes. So I think that was a very big part on this. It's a vindication of the president's wishes in this, and it's also a reminder that Republicans really should have won more seats in the last election. This is not going to get any easier going forward doing some legislation, and it will call on the president's ability to call some of those Democrats who've been more open to him than they were in the past to join him on some matters of legislation and perhaps pass a few things on a bipartisan basis. That's going to be more necessary, and we've seen it today when you can only lose one vote, Republican vote, and still pass a partisan bill.
Molly Hemingway still with us as well. We've got 10 minutes to go to the top of the hour. Mike Johnson, reelected House Speaker. Your thoughts and what this means for governing going forward?
Well, I think that point that Byron just made is so key. This is such a narrowly divided House, although Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House, that this is a real opportunity for Democrats who want to be part of the solutions to play a role here. When you had the first Trump administration, it wasn't just hostility among the Democrats, it was cartoonish hostility. They refused to accept the legitimacy of the first Trump election. I think a third of all Democrats refused to even show up at the inauguration because they believed the conspiracy theory that Trump had stolen the 2016 election by colluding with Russia. And you had people just immediately move toward impeachment votes, and Byron wrote a great book on all of that. This time, I think a lot of Americans are just not in the mood for that. They want to see solutions. They want to see things better.
All right.
Let's listen into the House floor. This is the pomp and circumstance. Now Speaker Mike Johnson and Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries coming down the main aisle there to the applause of their colleagues. Again, Jeffries will deliver a speech, then hand the gavel to Johnson, and then the official work of swearing in the members who are still at this moment representatives-elect. You can imagine this is a big relief for Speaker Johnson. Sandra.
Of course, and then let the governing begin.
The Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, will listen in. Sandra, it's been great being with you.
You as well,
I think we're going to run up to the top of the hour.
All right, let's listen.
Whip Clark, Chairman Aguilar, thank you for your kind and generous words of nomination. To my colleagues in government, new members of Congress, families, friends, all those assembled. It's a high honor and a distinct privilege to welcome you to the People's House and the 119th Congress. The Bible teaches us in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, 1st verse, that for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. It's fair to say that in a democracy, there's a time to campaign and a time to govern. The election is over. This is a new Congress. The American people need us as their elected representatives in this season to put down our partisan swords and pick up bipartisan plowshares. It's time for us to come together, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans, to get things done for the people. In that spirit, House Democrats will work hard to find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues and the incoming administration on any issue, whenever and wherever possible, in order to make life better for everyday Americans. For far too long in this country, the cost of living has gone up, but the size of the middle class has come down. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Child care costs are too high. Insurance costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. America is too expensive. There are far too many people in this great country who for decades have been struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. That is not acceptable in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We need to build an affordable economy for hard-working American taxpayers, and we need to build it now. It's time for us to come together and finally lower the high cost of living in the United States of America once and for all. And we will work with anyone of any party to get that done. We will work with anyone to secure our borders, and we will work with anyone to fix our broken immigration system in a comprehensive and bipartisan manner. At the same period of time, we will push back against far-right extremism whenever necessary. So let me be clear. Social Security and Medicare are not entitlement programs. They are earned benefits. Hard-working American taxpayers pay in to Social Security and Medicare every day, every week, every month, every year throughout their entire adult life. They've earned those benefits, worked hard for those benefits, and deserve those benefits. So as Democrats, our promise to the American people is that we will fight hard to make sure that no one in this town takes away Social Security or Medicare from the American people. Not now, not ever. No means never. Our position is that it is not acceptable to cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut veterans' benefits, or cut nutritional assistance from children and families in order to pay for massive tax breaks for billionaires and wealthy corporations. House Democrats will fight hard to protect working class Americans and the things that matter to them, not the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. Keep your hands off Social Security and Medicare. Over the last 4 years, it's been a great honor for us to work alongside President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, whose administration rescued the economy from a once-in-a-century pandemic, delivered historic infrastructure investments, created more than 15 million good-paying jobs, enacted common-sense gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years, provided life-sustaining health insurance to veterans suffering from toxic exposure, championed the largest investment in combating the climate crisis in the history of the world, which we will defend, and brought down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans. Thank you, President Biden and Vice President Harris, for your powerful, principled, and purposeful public service. Thank you. Two months ago, the American people elected Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States of America. Thank you for that very generous applause. It's okay. There are no election deniers on our side of the aisle. You see, one should love America. One should love America when you win and when you lose. That's the patriotic thing to do, and that's the America that House Democrats will fight hard to preserve because we love this country. America is bigger than any one campaign, any one election, or any one individual. America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Let us never forget that our country is free, not simply because we are strong. America is strong because we are free. That freedom is now under assault. There are some in this country who apparently believe that the freedom of economic opportunity that made them wealthy should not apply to everyone else. Our message to that crowd is simple. Democrats will never abandon the long walk toward freedom. We will fight hard to defend the freedom of opportunity that makes the American dream possible. We will fight hard for the freedom to vote and to fight for a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We will fight for the freedom to organize and join a union of your choice. We will fight to defend the free enterprise system but work hard to make sure that it actually works for working class Americans. And we will always defend a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. America promises one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's the America House Democrats will fight hard to preserve. God bless you. God bless the House of Representatives. May God continue to bless the United States of America. It is now my responsibility to present the gavel to the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana, the son of a firefighter, a God-fearing man, a husband, and a loving father of four, the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leader Jeffries, all of our treasured colleagues here in the House. I'm grateful for this nomination. I'm grateful for this election, for the confidence this chamber has placed in me. It is the great honor of my life to serve this body with all of you. Of course, these are difficult days in our home state of Louisiana, where I come from. We all know about the terrorist attack in New Orleans, and it's really shaken our state. People are reeling from that attack. It took the lives of 14 innocent people, and it injured dozens more. And I wanted to begin appropriately today. If we could, I'd ask you all to join me in a moment of silence for the victims of this horrific act. Thank you. Thank you for that. I believe in giving honor where honor is due, and all of us do well to honor our spouses. My wife happens to be here this time. She didn't make it last time. It happened a little sudden. Kelly, would you stand up here in the gallery? Thank you. And we have our 4 children here, Hannah, Abby, Jack, and Will. We all stand up just really quickly. Come on. I wanted to do that. All of us recognize that there are no perks to being a congressman's kid, right? It's all sacrifice. And our spouses put up with so much, endless hours in travel and all the responsibilities upon us. And we're good to remind them how important they are to us and how we could not do the job without them. And so it's appropriate for all of us to do that. Thank you, guys. This is a momentous time in the nation of the history of our nation. It really is. And as members of the 119th Congress, we are stewards of the great American Revolution that began almost exactly now 250 years ago, 1775 and 1776. It will fall at the time of this Congress, the great anniversary. And in these 2.5 centuries, we've been reminded repeatedly that freedom is never free. And we have stood tall as the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It is without debate. We are the freest, the most powerful, most benevolent nation that has ever been in the history of the world. And it's not by happenstance. We are the ones who settled the West. We are the ones who ended slavery, who laid the transcontinental railroad, who gave women the right to vote, who won 2 world wars, who landed on the moon, and who won the Cold War. Throughout our history, we have done what no one thought was possible. And still, at 250 years old, our nation is actually a young nation. This past fall, I had opportunity to go to the G7 speakers meeting. It was held in Italy. It's the only international trip I took as speaker over the last 14 months because I didn't have time to do it, but it was a quick 3-day jaunt, and met with my colleagues, the speakers of the other parliaments, the great governments around the world. And we talked about that, how really special America is, how unique we are in our place on the globe, and how important it is for us to maintain that. And as I talked to these colleagues from around the world, I thought, our closest allies, who recognize how important we are, how important this body, this house is. I thought about how is it that such a young country has become so exceptional, so singular in its importance, that today stands as the world's leader in liberty and the economy and culture. 100 years ago, President Calvin Coolidge answered that very question in his inaugural address. It was March of 100 years ago, exactly almost. He said this: "We best serve our own country and most successfully discharge our obligations to humanity by continuing to be openly and candidly, intensely and scrupulously American." I love that. I love that. Today, yeah, that's right. That's an applause line. Today, my friends, our nation is the envy of the world. Why? Because we have been marked by a spirit and a people who are explicitly that. We are explicitly American. We don't try to be like other nations, and we recognize that a strong America is good for the entire world. And everybody around the globe knows that. That's right. We also recognize that the core principles that made America what we are must still be preserved today. The principles, I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but it's really the 7 core principles of the nation itself. Individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, human dignity. These are the ingredients, the things that made us who we are. And in America, we know that human flourishing is best achieved by adherence to time-tested truths. We could list a number of those simple truths. Here's a couple. It's better to give a hand up than a hand out. That innovation thrives when bureaucracy dies. The simple truth that it is parents and families and not administrators that must be in charge of their children's education. The path of prosperity has long been paved with policies that put America and Americans first. And that is what we will champion in the 119th Congress. We have a mandate, and that was shown in the election cycle. The people want an America First agenda. They do. Sadly, for the past 4 years of divided government, too many politicians in Washington have done the opposite. Open borders and overregulation have destroyed our cities and stifled innovation. Inflation and weak leadership have left Americans poorer, and they have placed our country in a perilous position. That's right. But in recent months, we've witnessed something happening, something that's really remarkable, a political moment in our modern history, a groundswell of Americans from every state, race, and religion who now demand that we put the interest of Americans first again, and we will, and we will. This is a powerful new coalition of our country. It's a coalition that insists that we purge the policies of America last and we bury them in the graveyard of history's mistakes, because it was a big mistake. To that end, this Congress will renounce the status quo and we will listen to the voices of the people. We will act quickly and we will start by defending our nation's borders. That's the number one priority. Yes. In coordination with President Trump, this Congress will give our border and immigration enforcement agents the resources that they need to do their job. We will secure the border, we will deport dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens, and finally finish building the border wall. You said you'd work with us on that, Hakeem. I'm counting on it. After 4 years of high inflation, we have a big agenda. We have a lot to do, and we can do it in a bipartisan fashion. We can fight high inflation, and we must. We'll give relief to Americans, and we'll extend the Trump tax cuts. We're going to protect our industries from one-sided trade deals, and we're going to bring overseas investments back to America's shores. That's right. We'll defeat the harmful effects of inflation, and we'll make life affordable again for America's hardworking people. As leaders of a nation with vast natural resources that God has blessed us with, it is our duty to restore America's energy dominance, and that's what we'll do. We have to apply common sense. We have to stop the attacks on liquefied natural gas, pass legislation to eliminate the Green New Deal, that funding. We're going to expedite new drilling permits. We're going to save the jobs of our auto manufacturers, and we're going to do that by ending the ridiculous EV mandates. And as heirs to the American Revolution and the descendants of patriots who defied tyranny, in the coming months, we are going to pass legislation to roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of government known as the administrative state. We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of government. We're going to return the power back to the people. And in coordination with President Trump and his administration, we are going to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient federal workforce. We need to do that. Our people do not deserve to be ruled by millions of bureaucrats they've never voted for, never met, and can never hold accountable. They deserve a government that is led by those they've elected to lead. That is how Article 1 is supposed to work. That was the idea of the Congress, and we will return to that principle. The American people have called on us to reject business as usual and throw out the status quo. We must and we will heed their call. This is especially important as it comes to our nation's military. For too long, the Washington establishment has sought to appease and accommodate our nation's adversaries. They've tried to replace our military warriors with social justice warriors. It does not work. And while we're still the most powerful fighting force in the history of the world, by God's grace, the same establishment has eroded the capacities of our Army and Navy and diminished the readiness of our Air Force. We have to put an end to this madness. My friends and my colleagues, I think we should all unite in this idea. It is time now to reinstate fear in our enemies, refocus our mission on lethality, and realign our commitment to peace through strength right now. We have to prioritize the things that matter most. We have to make adequate investments in defense. This is the most dangerous moment since World War II, and everyone around the world is looking to America and looking to this body to ensure that we maintain the peace. What we're proposing now is just simply, as President Trump likes to say, a return to common sense. And he's exactly right. That message resonated across the country. I am very thankful, personally, that this body is filled with men and women who are committed to that change, to return to common sense. We can do this together. We should. It is our responsibility to do so. When I first took this gavel, many of you heard me say that I don't believe in luck or consequence. I believe in the idea of providence. And this morning, I participated with many of you early this morning in the 119th Congress Interfaith Prayer Service. It was held at St. Peter's Catholic Church. Many of you were there. It was an ecumenical service and a bipartisan service, which was great. My good friend Hakeem Jeffries began by a reading with the Old Testament. He read out of Deuteronomy 10. And then I was asked to provide a prayer for the nation. I offered one that is quite familiar to historians and probably many of us. It said right here in the program, it says right under my name, "It is said each day of his 8 years of the presidency and every day thereafter until his death, President Thomas Jefferson recited this prayer." I wanted to share it with you here at the end of my remarks, not as a prayer per se right now, but as a reminder of what our third president and the primary author of the Declaration of Independence thought was so important that it should be a daily recitation. Let me just read you that prayer. It goes like this. Thomas Jefferson's Prayer for the Nation, it's entitled. "Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable ministry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitude brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with thy spirit of wisdom those whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law, we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail, of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen." That was Thomas Jefferson's prayer. Yeah. Suffer not our trust in thee to fail. We will not fail. We cannot fail. We are all in this together. Our nation is counting on us to band together and solve these problems and get this done. I've said before that I believe God has elevated each one of you, that's just my belief, to your positions of leadership. And it's an act of providence that you've all been placed in your specific roles in this specific moment at this historic time, at the 250-year inflection point of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is no small thing. We're also witnesses to the providence that spared our incoming president, President Trump, from the assassin's bullet, remarkable as that was, and to the new coalition of Americans that has risen from every creed, color, and cul-de-sac who want us to put America first. Our people are asking for a thriving economy and a rebuilt middle class and strong borders and a strong military, and we can deliver that. See, these objectives and these aims don't have an R or a D behind them. They have a USA. That's what we're about. In just a few moments, we're all going to take an oath. It is the same one oath for one nation and under the banner of one great American flag. This is an opportunity for us to protect our shared American heritage, to maintain the conditions needed for self-government, and to defend what Hakeem said earlier, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Working together, we have the potential to be one of the most consequential Congresses in the history of this great nation, so long as we work together, we do the right thing, and we put America first. As we think about all we've accomplished in the past 250 years, we can only imagine what life will be like 250 years from now. Whatever the future may look like, if we do our jobs now, we can help ensure that our civic virtues will endure. that this nation will still be an example to all the world for its greatness and its example of self-government. And that in spite of our great challenges and even our disagreements and our healthy debates, this extraordinary institution, the People's House, will still be standing strong. Thank you all so much, and God bless America.
Let's bring in Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff under President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Karl, thanks for being here. I guess my question to you is it your sense that if it wasn't going to be Mike Johnson today, that it wasn't going to be Mike Johnson?
No, I think it was going to be Mike Johnson no matter what, whether it took one ballot or several, because there was nobody else in the caucus who was as well-liked and respected as he is, and who has done in difficult circumstances a good job. And he had the president's backing, and I thought that was critical to his success. He was going to be the speaker. The question was going to be, was he going to be the speaker on the first ballot, or was he going to be a weakened speaker after subsequent ballots? But no, he was the man, and the president's blessing carried a big part of the load for him.
So if it was always going to be Mike Johnson, and these were just a couple members being fiscal purists, and there really was not, as you stated, a ready alternative, what does this mean for the 2 years, effectively, that Trump has to get his agenda across before the majority comes into question in the midterms?
Yeah, well, Brett put his finger on it. It's going to be tough. When you only have a couple of votes to spare, and remember, it's going to get worse before it gets better, because while we will pick up a Florida seat, the 1st District seat will be filled, the Matt Gaetz seat will be filled relatively early. We're going to lose 2 members of the House once they get confirmed to the job of UN Ambassador Elise Stefanik and Director of the CIA, not the Director of the CIA, that's John Radcliffe, a former member, but yeah, we're going to lose 2 members who are going to get positions in the government. So this is going to be a balancing act. This is why the budget reconciliation measure is so important. It allows bills to be brought up, measures to be brought up as part of that bill that have to do with the budget, and it's the tool by which the president can quickly bring up the immigration matters and pass it through the House, and then have it go to the Senate, where rather than having 60 votes, it would require only 50 plus 1.
Karl Rove, I got to cut you off. I'm so sorry, sir. We are out of time, and there's so much to talk about with that. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Karl. We have been watching live as House Speaker Mike Johnson won his battle for the speakership on the first ballot. And the 119th Congress has officially been sworn in. We are now off to the races. President-elect Trump celebrating Speaker Johnson's dramatic win, telling Fox News Digital it was a great honor to help him pull it off. And, quote, "It is all a great continuation of Make America Great Again. Mike Johnson will do a fabulous job as Speaker." Let's bring in special report anchor and executive editor Brett Baer, who reported earlier that the president-elect was working the phones. Brett, this was a test of the president-elect's strength, and he certainly passed it.
Yeah, it was. Good afternoon again. This is history, the 119th Congress now in session. Speaker Johnson being sworn in by the Dean of the House, Hal Rogers, the longest-serving member elected in 1980, served since 1981 there from Kentucky. But this is a moment. There was a lot of drama today with these 2 votes being switched at the end to keep it on the first ballot. A little background there. According to sources in Trump world and 2 lawmakers who were a part of this, President-elect Trump made calls, as you mentioned, all morning prior to the vote. But his most consequential call, we're told, was as the vote was locked up, with Mike Johnson short of the majority and 3 members having voted against him. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, others convened the standouts, Ralph Norman and Keith Self, in a side office just off the House floor for a conference call where we're told the president-elect was on the speakerphone. We are told he said something to the effect of it would be disrespectful to Americans who voted in an historic presidential election to have this speaker's vote go to a second or third ballot. And he added it would be disrespectful to me. ending essentially with, we've got a lot to do, let's get to it. And a short time later, we saw representatives-elect at that time, Norman and Self, walk to the well of the House chamber, and they changed their votes to Johnson, giving him enough votes to become the 56th Speaker of the House in this 119th Congress. President-elect crediting Chip Roy, Andy Biggs from Arizona as well, we're told. So eventually you get to that comment that he gave Fox Digital about the unity. It was a bumpy road to get there. And I think that, you're going to have questions about legislation and how much he may have to be working those phones to make sure representatives are on his agenda and getting those votes across the finish line.
Ralph Norman. Congressman, thanks for being here. Tell me, why, sir, did you vote against Speaker Johnson to begin with if there was such clear consensus that it wasn't going to be anyone else?
Let me say this. We never know how, with 435 members, how people are going to vote. I didn't know how anybody else was going to vote. We had met with Speaker Johnson yesterday for an extended period of time, and I just didn't come away with the feeling that the oomph or the willingness to fight for Trump's agenda was there. And I use as a backdrop what's happened the last 14 months, where you had 1,500-page bills, omnibills, that you couldn't read, where you had no spending cuts to offset $100 billion in new spending, where you had just no, and I know we had a slim majority, but that's over with now. What we wanted to impress with him yesterday was, are you going to fight for these things that we've been asking and suggesting for, like a balanced budget, like offsets, like really getting behind all of the Trump agenda. I knew President Trump was supporting Mike Johnson. He called, and we had a great conversation. But I knew where he stood.
What did he say to you, sir?
He just said Mike Johnson is the only one that's got the support among the body to become Speaker. And I get that. But, the only way I had to let my voice be heard was what I did. I would do it again. We went in meetings, the meeting off the floor, and I said, Mike, are you going to give us specific examples of fighting for the things we mentioned? Will you give us your word? He said, yes. So I said, okay, we'll take you at your word. That's why I changed my vote, and that's why he's Speaker of the House.
Did he make any concrete concessions to you?
No. There were no concessions and no quid pro quo. People are going to make up things that they were. I don't operate like that, and neither does Mike Johnson. But, our thing is, my main points were what Mike knew, has known all along. I don't think he understood the opposition that was for him. You saw the ones that just did not vote or were quiet when the vote came around. But I think now he understands the fact that no more suspension votes where you rely on more Democrat votes than Republicans. That's what's killing the country. If we're going to do the same thing over and over again as we have done for the last 14 months, we're going to be in the same position. I'm just not willing to go along with that, and I didn't. And Mike gave me the assurance that he was going to.
What do you say, sir, to your colleagues who, I hear from Republicans that the GOP is good at getting in its own way. What's your response to that?
That who's getting their own way? I couldn't
Republicans
understand.
Getting their own way.
No, Republicans are free thinkers. I mean, what's an additional hour into the General Assembly where we debated this? What's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong. We're free-spirited. We have all different ideas. Not everybody agrees with me, nor do I agree with them. But having healthy discussion like we had, having healthy meetings like we did, I think makes sense. We ought to do more of it. We're not like lemmings that are going to follow this, where this country goes off the cliff, and that's where we've been headed, both Republican and Democrat. It's got to come to an end, and I was glad it worked out the way it did. Mike has got a tremendous opportunity to show the American people that not only is he just going to say it, he's going to fight it. He's going to have Trump Trump backing him up, which is all a good thing.
Do you think, though, that having this stretch out and look a little tenuous for a moment, doesn't that give the Democrats a little bit of a, something to chew on?
Absolutely not. The country had the last year to chew on what's happened to them over the last 4 years under the Biden debacle. And 76 million people chose Donald Trump.
Well,
and his agenda.
what it looks like, though, to regular people, sir, what it looks like is that if the Republicans can't get all their members in line to elect a speaker and get the basic governing, functions in order, that it looks like it would be reasonable to expect that most bills are going to require Democratic votes. You don't think that's the case?
I do not. I think what's changed is we've got the House, the Senate, and we've got a president who's willing to exert leverage to get what's best for the country, including, the spending cuts, the border wall, the crime under control, all the above. And he will force his way. And that's when we had the conversation with him. I said, Mr. President, it's going to take everything, all the political muscle you have to get this body to go along, both Republicans and whatever Democrats come along, which I don't know that they will on his main agenda. But we're behind him. It's over with now. Did it take a little longer? Yes, but it was time well spent. And the people who are disagreeing with me the most or texting me, my response to them, if they had seen everything that was discussed, they would agree with me.
Did you hear from anybody who was threatening your seat or saying they might primary you when you were holding up this process?
Look, I have never. The answer is yes, but I've always had that. Look, I've never based my vote on what my political future was. If people want to primary me, do it. If they want to run somebody else, it's a free country. And it makes all of us better. So I don't respond to that, and neither do I respond to threats of people doing different things. I do what I think is right, and that's why I'm in the political arena, and that's why I'm here to represent the people of the 5th District. And I think we're going to have a good next 4 years.
All right, Congressman Ralph Norman, thank you very much for speaking with us. Appreciate it, and congratulations, sir.
So my next guest was a yes for Johnson, but also has a warning for the House Speaker. Texas Republican Congressman Chip Roy joins me now. So, Congressman, first, I want to ask you for your reaction about this New York judge, Juan Merchant, saying that Trump's set a sentencing hearing now for January 10th before inauguration, but maybe signaling no jail time. What do you think about this that just came down?
Yeah, I mean, that's a power play by the New York, justice system that I think is a slap in the face of the President of the United States. I think we're going to have some serious conversations about what that means, in defense of the president. Most of these cases have gone away as they should. That lawfare was a, underhanded way to try to prevent President Trump from being able to be elected. And then since he's been elected, they're just trying to undermine his authority. I don't think that's going to stand. We'll move forward, and we're all going to be supporting the president, supporting his agenda over the next couple of weeks.
Now, to what happened today, you initially decided to pass on the first vote, and at the end of the first vote, you came back in and voted for Johnson. Was that a tactic or a message for him?
Well, look, it was very important for a group of us to make clear that, we're going to expect the agenda that the president ran on to get delivered. Mike Johnson is a friend. He's a friend to all of us. But we weren't satisfied with the way the 218th Congress unfolded. Keith Self expressed that very well. So we were making very clear that there's a block of us that are going to be watching very closely. We need to deliver. We need to actually secure the border. We need to actually pass policies before there's any conversation about future flow or any kind of status. We're going to do our job to secure the border, remove illegal aliens from this country. We're going to stop spending money we don't have. We're going to deliver on what the president ran on, and that's what matters. And so on the vote on the floor, we were being very clear that there's a block of us that are going to demand that on the policy changes. The president of the United States backed the speaker, so we backed the speaker in this election, but we're going to be watching every single vote, and we've got to make sure that we get what we set out to do and that we do what we said we would do when we ran for election this last year.
Congressman, you had said on X that there were more than 3 people who initially have reservations who voted or who didn't vote against Johnson. What are the reservations then?
Well, the reservations are we spent close to $3 trillion last year with more Democrat votes than Republican votes. We had multiple bills that were passed with a majority, lacking a majority of Republican votes. We saw what unfolded with a promise to say that we would secure the border of the United States before we funded Ukraine. Those were all failures, but that's looking in the rearview mirror. Today's a new day. It's 2025. The president asked us to get behind Mike Johnson. We did. It is now Mike Johnson's House to deliver. It is now Mike Johnson's job to deliver on the president's agenda. We will back him as long as we're delivering on that agenda. And so that is what we need to do right now, is come together to do that. We've got to stop spending money we don't have and racking up deficits. We've got to secure the border. We've got to get rid of the bureaucrats. We've got to make our country strong again. There can't be no room for doubt here. We've got to have leadership to get that done. And that's why today's vote. That's why there were 9 people who withheld their votes. It sends a message that we're going to be watching that.
Congressman, are you concerned that the drama we saw fold out today undermined in some way the ability to get President-elect Donald Trump's agenda fully passed through the House?
Not at all. Speaker Johnson was elected on the first ballot, but we were making very clear that we're going to demand to get the things done that need to get done. And that's what the president wants. We've had lots of conversations with the president. He wants us to deliver. He's had some very specific conversations with us and with the speaker. And I know those were going on the floor with those who initially voted no. But we've got a long ways to go. We've had too many failures in the past. The American people didn't vote for more of the same. So again, this is now Speaker Johnson's House of Representatives to deliver for the president. So we're going to expect delivery of all of the things the American people sent us here to do.
Do you think that all of the tax cuts, for instance, that the president-elect would like to see, in addition to extending the tax cut, but also talking about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, can all of that get passed along with border security? I know your district is in Texas, so can it all get passed?
If the speaker does his job, I think we can get that done for the president, more importantly for the country. But importantly, when you're talking about tax policy, we need all of that to be not just deficit neutral, but reducing deficits. And not with made up growth rates, but with very specific recognition that whatever we do with tax policy must have strong offsetting cuts. And we need to undo the damage of the Biden administration, repeal the so-called Inflation Reduction Act with all the climate subsidies, repeal the student loan fiasco, repeal all of the expansion of food stamps, do all of the stuff the American people sent us here to do. We could save a couple of $1 trillion out of the gate if we reverse Biden's damaging policies, secure the border, and then we can get busy in reconciliation, getting us to deficit reduction.
So you want to see border go first in the last 30 seconds we have with a one vote, basically majority. Can you do that?
Well, we have to, and now it's the job of the speaker to get it done. I will do everything in my power to support that, but there are going to be some guardrails and some red lines that I'm going to say are necessary to get my support. And we're talking about spending, we talk about the border, those things matter. So we've got to get in a room, we've got to work together, and we've got to deliver. That's what the American people sent us here to do. That's what the president wanted us to do. So we will now work to get it done, and the speaker has got to deliver.
Representative Chip Roy, it was an excellent day today for you guys. First round, first ballot. Took some drama to get there, but you got there. It'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. Appreciate your time on this. Thank you.
Great to see you all.
56th Speaker of the House, Speaker once again, Mike Johnson, and the Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries there. Joining us now to discuss how congressional Republicans plan to advance President-elect Trump's agenda, House Majority Whip Tom Emmer. Congressman, thanks for the time. You know, you're the only other person who received a vote besides those two men, Mike Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries. Thomas Massie, Congressman, voted for you for Speaker. He and two others caused quite a stir, a little bit of drama on Capitol Hill. Well, what's your take about what happened there today and what the message was from them?
I think the message is from the Republican conference, Brett. Again, thanks for having me, but the message is Republicans are unified behind Donald Trump and the incoming administration, and we're ready to get to work right now on enacting the Trump agenda, which is exactly what the American people voted for on November 5th. Were there people that wanted to be heard? Were there people who had things that they wanted our speaker to know were important to them? Yes. That's just the way this process works, but it happened on the first ballot. And if you'll recall, 2 years ago, it took 15 and almost a week to get it done. Today, it was one ballot. We're one and done, and we're ready to get moving immediately.
Well, it's definitely a much different situation. But, you know, if you look at the breakdown and that majority and how it sits right now, 219 to 215, and then you're going to lose two more Republicans with Mike Waltz becoming National Security Advisor and Representative Stefanik, eventually, if she gets confirmed to UN Ambassador. That's 217 to 215. With that slim majority, how do you get through the big ticket items that President-elect Trump wants to get through?
Well, nothing's going to be easy, but Brett, everybody talks about this narrow margin that we have. Does nobody remember that for the last 2 years we started out with 222 with a 5-vote advantage, which went down to a 4-vote, and then at times was 220. And we passed things that nobody thought we could pass, including a debt ceiling increase, including the Parental Bill of Rights, including the strongest energy bill in the last 30 years, in a border bill that's the strongest in 20 years. We did all that with such a narrow majority, and yet nobody knows because all of it sat on Chuck Schumer's desk. We're going to do it again, Brett. We will be able to perform. The biggest thing that we're going to have to be careful of is member health and making sure that they can be here. Attendance is going to be a very important thing.
Yes, yeah, they have to be there, otherwise you lose the numbers. What about this back and forth about whether there's one package, one bite at the apple for budget reconciliation, or there's two this year to kind of break up immigration and taxes? How do you see that right now?
Well, that's Donald Trump's call. He's going to make a call soon and say, this is what I want. And as soon as he does, Brett, we're ready to take it either way. If he wants to do two bills with one in February, and that's where the speaker goes, we'll get it done. And I imagine that will be a much slimmer one. That's why you could do it in a shorter period of time. And the second one would be sometime probably before Memorial Day. We could get it out of the House pretty early, but then the Senate would have to do its work. If it's one big bill, well, then the thought is if that's what the president decides to do, we could probably have that out of the House by the end of March, and the Senate does its work, we could have that to the president's desk by Memorial Day.
Listen, you're a tough guy. You talk straight to people whenever you do interviews, but House Majority Whip, when you're counting these votes with that slim majority, that could be a tough job trying to herd Republicans. It seems easier for Democrats year after year. Why is that?
Well, I don't know. I just told you we had a lot of success. I don't know why it seems easier for Democrats. Let's just make it clear, and you know this, Brett, it's much easier to be in the minority. You're not going to see the divisions within that group because they don't govern when they're in the minority. They can work with Republicans, and we'll see if they're going to show an ability to do that. Hakeem suggested today that they would, but for us, nothing's ever going to be easy, Brett. Nothing here is easy. When we had 247 members, we could not pass the strongest border bill. We did that with 222. So I just don't underestimate what we can do. You just got to have the numbers here, and we got to do our job. Our job is to make sure that the members and the public know exactly what it is that Donald Trump is moving, why it's important, and how it's going to benefit their lives. We do that, and their constituents. We do that, we'll be able to pass things that you wouldn't expect we could do.
Congressmember, we appreciate the time. We'll be following it all.
Thanks, Brett.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.